Hi, and welcome to my channel, Laura's Library Card. So it is time for my November wrap-up, where I discuss the titles that I finished in November. So let's just dive right in. I finished 10 books in November, which is actually the lowest page count of the year at 2,714 pages. I'm not sure exactly what happened, just kind of was slumpy, I guess. I read 7 books on audio format, 1 book in a physical format, and 2 books digitally. And, that's pretty much tracks for the whole year. The first title I finished in November was The Husband's Secret. This is by Liane Moriarty, and I listened to the audiobook for one of my real life book clubs. This is kind of hard to describe, but basically there is a secret that one of our main characters finds out partway through the book, kind of surprisingly 30% of the way through the book, so it's not right away, about her husband, because it was supposed to be opened upon his death, and he is very much still alive. There are 3 different point of views throughout this book of these 3 main character women, and we learn how they are interconnected and sort of how they all interact with each other, especially resolving around this secret. I think it's supposed to be sort of a fiction drama or a thriller, and I didn't particularly find it very thrilling. I actually thought it was relatively slow paced. It is an Australian book with an Australian narrator, so I enjoyed that part because I usually listen to American and English narrators. So that was, kind of fun and different. The twists throughout the book I thought were unexciting. At the end, I kept expecting a very big twist at the end, and I just didn't really feel that was pulled off, in my personal opinion. And at the very, very, very end, in the epilogue, there's literally one sentence that kind of halfway that is supposed to explain away a lot of the plot of this book, and to me that just was really cheap. That just one throwaway, well, if things had been different kind of line was able to reverse all of the plot and tension throughout the book. So I was kind of annoyed with that. But overall, we deal with, sort of real women who are figuring out and learning about themselves, as well as dealing with major reveals in their own lives, where there's sort of marriage struggles, there's strong themes about forgiveness and blame, and then there's, sort of a lot of struggle around morality issues. So I found those kind of generally interesting, but overall I felt like the book was kind of a little lackluster. And to me, 2 of the points of view really worked well together, but the third one kind of didn't fit that well. It wasn't an equal triangle, so I just wished it had been done a little bit better. I am interested in reading more by this author because I really liked one of her other books that I'm blanking on, Big Little Lies. I read Big Little Lies and quite enjoyed it. I liked it better than The Husband's Secret. The second title I finished in November was Barbarian's Hope by Ruby Dixon. This is the 11th book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series, and in this book we follow Asha and Himalo. It is a second chance romance because these 2 were together and then had a baby who was born too early and did not survive. So strong content warnings there. If that is something that is a problem, definitely know that going in, because these 2 need to work on communicating throughout the whole book and ultimately work out their feelings and try to get back together. And it is a second chance romance after dealing with this intense loss of both their child and their relationship. So there was also a subplot with one of the other characters named Claire, and she's trying to plan all these holidays, and I just sort of felt like that subplot was like padding to the book and didn't really contribute a ton to the book, but that was my own personal opinion. I did struggle to connect to these characters, mostly because I felt they didn't communicate. It wasn't a miscommunication trope. It was just that they didn't bother to ever talk to each other. And so, they each made assumptions as to what the other person was feeling or the reasons why they had done action XYZ. And so I just really kind of struggled to connect to either of these characters. I found the male love interest boring, and I just kind of was struggling throughout this whole book. I wanted a little bit more tension. I felt like that was kind of lacking, and the steaminess was kind of low. And I think that that was appropriate dealing with the level, heaviness of the general subtext and content. But I just kind of was a little bit bummed out with this installment of the series. The third book that I finished in November, I actually did a vlog for, so I will link this video up in the cards and down in the description. But this was Payback's a Witch, and the author is Lana Harper. I had this on an ebook, and I was able to tune in to the Winers Book Club live show discussion. So I will also link that down in the description as well, because it was very interesting. In brief, we have a main character who is a witch, but she is out of touch with her witchy powers, and she goes home for reasons, and she basically is functioning as a judge in her town's Triwizard tournament, essentially. And throughout the course of this book, she starts developing a relationship with one of the other competitors, or one of the competitors, and it's a sapphic relationship. For me, I really struggled with the writing style throughout this book. It was very atmospheric and heavy in the detail to create a strong setting, which I appreciated, but it just kind of bogged down the plot. As a romance, I really felt it lacked a lot of emotional development and connection with our love interest. And there was sort of one semi-steamy scene, but I wanted kind of more out of that, and I just didn't feel that the two of them really connected. I really was disappointed with the end of the book. I felt like it wrapped up way too quickly and easily, and the sort of final resolution of the action that happens, I just was like, really? I don't think we needed that. I really don't think we needed that. But generally there are themes of accepting oneself and coming home again and accepting your own position in the world and finding, who you are and finding love. So if you're interested in more of my thoughts where I generally was kind of meh about this book, check out my vlog. The next book that I finished was a contemporary romance. This is Battle Royal by Lucy Parker. I listened to the audiobook on this, and I did not particularly care for the narration. The narrator has a sort of heavy English accent that took me a while to get used to, but also her tone of voice was quite breathy and had a slight lisp. So I was used to it by 50% of the way through the book, but it really struggled I had to slow the speed down, and I just struggled to enjoy her voice. Throughout the course of this book, there's a lot happening, a lot happening. Basically, we follow Sylvie and Dominic. This is their love story, and they are both bakers, and they are co-judges on a show that is essentially the Great British Bake Off. And they are also competing for a contract for a royal wedding cake, because the Princess of England has just announced that she's engaged, and they are competing for who will get the contract for the wedding cake. There are 3 different love story plot lines happening throughout this book. There's Sylvie and Dominic's plotline, there's the princess and her fiance's plotline, and then also the princess's uncle is his sort of love story. He's, dead, but like she really misses him and wants something to remind her of him to have to do the cake. So not only are we learning about these 3 love stories and watching Sylvie and Dominic fall in love, but there's a ton of other plot lines. There's the TV show. There's strong themes of grief and loss of family members who have passed away in the past. There are strong themes of connecting to current family members and feeling lonely. There's like the competition element between the two of them. There's the stealing of ingredients and recipes. There's so much going on that to me it really decreased the amount of tension throughout this book, because I wanted it to be more romance focused between Sylvie and Dominic. I think that I really feel like they could have eliminated the Great British Bake Off judging part and just included a couple other scenes where the two of them are together, because I felt like that show functioned only to put our characters together. But I don't know. To me, it was like too much of a slow burn because we constantly were taking these detours on these other subplots. I like that inclusion of some of the grief elements and, heavier text about loneliness and like losing a family member, but I just didn't feel like it fit really well in this book as a romance. So I definitely want to read another book by Lucy Parker, but this book for me just kind of didn't quite make it as much as I wanted to really like it. The next book I read was All the Feels by Olivia Dade. This is the sequel to Spoiler Alert, and I read this electronically. In this book, we follow Alex and Lauren. Alex is Marcus's co-worker from the first book, and Alex is kind of a wild card. He has ADHD, and he has a past of getting into trouble on and off set. And so the showrunners hire him a minder to help make sure that he doesn't make poor choices or get bad publicity for the show. And so that is where Lauren comes in, and she is very serious and stoic, and she has this dry humor. And so they're sort of opposites attract here. And we are told 8,000 times in the text that Lauren is not conventionally attractive, that she has this feature or that feature that makes her looks not conventionally beautiful. And over the course of this book, Alex and Lauren have this very bantery, teasing relationship. But to me, it was kind of too much. I have a history in my own personal life of sort of making somebody the butt of the joke as part of me trying to be funny. And so I'm kind of trying to be a lot more aware of that in books. And I felt like that was primarily what was happening here with Alex, that he was constantly calling her a shrew and constantly teasing her on her looks and her being such a spoil sport and such a nanny. But and Lauren did take it well, but I personally just felt like that teasing was like too much. I wanted more personality from both characters. I thought they were well drawn sort of individually. I wanted more out of Lauren, but I just didn't quite feel the chemistry between the two of them. And so I felt like while the book had the same readability as Spoiler Alert, it was missing the complexity of the like love that had been layered into the different plot lines in Spoiler Alert. So I just felt like it was like a good book, but it didn't compare to the level of Spoiler Alert. So I was just kind of bummed. And I still enjoyed it, would still recommend it. I just feel like Spoiler Alert for me was like a 4.5 or 5 star, and All the Feels was like 3.5 to 4 stars for me, even though I'm not really trying to give out star ratings anymore. That's where I'm landing with that book. The next book on this list kind of is unlike all the rest. This is Say Cheese and Die by R.L. Stine. This is one of the Goosebumps books, and this just happened all in one day. I listened to the audiobook because I had seen Gavin from the channel How to Train Your Gavin had put out a video where he read like all 60 something Goosebumps books in a month, and it was very entertaining to listen to him throughout the course of his video, which is long but totally worth it. He's hilarious. And so I had a rush of nostalgia and thought, yeah, I remember reading a bunch of Goosebumps books when I was a kid. Maybe something's available. So I just literally typed in Goosebumps and picked the first one that popped up in my library. So I listened to Say Cheese and Die. And in the plot of this is that a bunch of kids steal this camera that, when you take a picture, it prints out a picture. But when they print out the picture never matches what they just snapped, and it's usually showing something bad. So over the course of the book, it's unclear if the camera is predicting something bad that will happen or if it's causing something bad to happen. But I was expecting the Say Cheese and Die. I was expecting a lot of people to die, but actually only one person at the end of the book dies. And so, I mean, it is low, sort of middle grade, appropriate level of scariness. We have people getting head injuries and car accidents and literally disappearing. So, okay, yes, there was sort of some chills and some goosebumps, but ultimately I was kind of bummed with the end because we get the villain monologuing as to sort of how this camera came to be and what it does. and it just didn't really make any sense. And like the villain wants to basically kill these kids because he's like, you know too much. And I'm like, why? This doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make any sense why he had the camera hidden in this abandoned house as opposed to, you know, throwing it to the bottom of the ocean or something. So whatever, I listened to this audiobook pretty much straight through very quickly and easily in half an afternoon. And it was a fun nostalgia trip, and it was like middle grade level of chilling, and that was Goosebumps done. I'm fine with not ever reading another one of those until I probably eventually someday have my own kids and they're interested. The last book that I'm going to talk about here is That Full Moon Feeling by Ashley Robin Franklin. This is a book this is the only book I read physically, and it is a graphic novel. This is a very short story. I think it's only 64 pages or something. It is a paranormal romance sapphic graphic novel. We follow a witch and a werewolf, and basically in this short story they meet up and they go on a couple dates, and it's a getting to know you, see if we like each other start. I didn't particularly care for the art style, but I think that's sort of a me thing. I did find it overall cute. There was this like fun, adventurous element to the book because they keep having to cast spells, or they get attacked, or there's you know, a lot of action and adventure involved in this, which was fun. And I really enjoyed the like world and setting. They very clearly have plenty of not just plain old humans around, so that was fun to see in the background. And magic and transformation and all things paranormal are just kind of de rigueur, so that was nice. So I liked this, and it was fine, but also it was just a short story. It felt like 3 chapters to the start of a whole book. It was like they meet and they kind of like each other, and that was it. So I wanted more. I don't know for sure if there is more coming out by this author that is a continuation of this story. I would love to read more, but you know, it was like not even a complete arc of a short story. It was like a bummer in that regard. So if you're counting, that was 7 books, and I did finish 3 nonfiction titles, and I talk about those somewhat extensively in a video that was all about the nonfiction that I read during Nonfiction November. So I will link that up in the cards and down in the description. Very briefly, they are We Are Displaced by Malala Yousafzai, How Stella Learned to Talk, long boring subtitle here, by Christina Hunger, and Disability Visibility, edited by Alice Wong. So I listened to all 3 of those on audiobook and generally enjoyed, you know, the nonfiction experience I had throughout November. Maybe not enjoyed. It was definitely interesting and I learned a lot, but I wouldn't say I necessarily super enjoyed because it was kind of hard-hitting and somewhat heart-wrenching in a lot of places. So definitely check out my Nonfiction November video, again, up in the cards down in the description, to hear more about the nonfiction I finished in November. So that's everything I read in November. If you have any comments about anything that I read, I would love to hear about that down in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and give me a recommendation of something that you really enjoyed in the month of November. Thanks for watching. Bye. Why am I struggling so much today? We are on the struggle bus today.